Greetings humans, Unknown here, and welcome back to another What If video. Today's What If is going to be part 1 to what if Deku, or Midoriya, had Ultra Instinct. If you guys want to figure out how I'm going to be formatting this What If, like how I'm going to display his abilities, how his abilities are going to work, all that sort of thing, check out the video prior. It'll be in a... what's it called? It'll be in the link in the description. It'll be a playlist, and right next to that playlist will be a link to my Discord, which you are free to join if you want to. You are free to recommend what ifs. You can talk with other people of the community. You can vote on things that are going on in the what ifs. Vote for thumbnail art. Get extra notifications for when things are coming out, things of the sort. And yeah. Yeah. We start this what if when Midoriya is born. Or, with that being said, let's get into the what if. We start this what if when Midoriya is born to Inko Midoriya. And when he is born, things deviate from the path in canon. Instead of being born a normal child, this bright, glowy aura shines off of him as soon as he's born. The doctors aren't sure as to what this is, and think that it might be somewhat similar to the first Quirk baby to ever be born, but they notice that this kid is different. Instead of glowing, it's his aura that's glowing. A little side area around him. And when they look at his eyes, he's completely calm. Not only is he calm, but his eyes are almost silver. Immediately after this happens, he drops from the form, still keeping the aura but losing the silver eyes, and continues not to cry, being an almost scary calm. Some time passes and Inko goes home with Midoriya. Or Inko goes home with Izuku. The doctors aren't sure as to what this is, but they just chalk it up to Midoriya having a quirk of some sorts. Some years pass, and that's when Midoriya, is growing up with Inko. And she can swear at least once or twice that a large aura exploded off of him and his hair turned white before reverting back to its normal colored state, but ultimately she's unsure about what she had seen. Eventually the time where Midoriya begins preschool rolls around, in which he meets Katsuki Bakugo. And in this what if, Bakugo is, still gonna act a little the same, but there are going to be main points that change everything. Around the time Bakugo awakens his quirk, he begins growing more distant from Midoriya, and being far more full of himself. Even to the point of bullying other kids, these other children, including Midoriya. Some time passes, and Bakugo, still being somewhat friendly with Midoriya in this what if, doesn't immediately start beginning to bully Midoriya. but instead bullies other children. Midori isn't fully aware of this, seeing as though Bakugo's often bullying children outside of the school times. But once Midoriya tags along with Bakugo after school and sees that he is bullying, well, someone for being a nerd. Midoriya doesn't like this and immediately puts himself between Bakugo and the other child. Bakugo questions what Midoriya is doing, and that's when Midoriya speaks up. Bakugo, I can't allow you to bully children like this. You know as much, and you know that's wrong, especially for someone who's trying to be a hero. Bakugo grows upset, but unknowing to Bakugo, the sudden urge and need for protection causes Midoriya to enter his Ultra Instinct Omen state, in which his hair becomes slightly more flowy and his eyes grow over silver. As soon as Bakugo tries to throw an explosion at Midoriya to, well, hit him with it, Midoriya dodges behind him faster than anybody can see. Faster than anyone can see, and it shocks him. Bakugo turns around to try and throw another explosion, but that's when Midoriya has his hand out, yet again standing behind Bakugo. But before Bakugo can even turn around, Bakugo seemingly gets hit by multiple punches at once, and is knocked to the ground. Everyone around is astonished, but that's when Midoriya turns around. To everyone's horror, he has a cold stare on his face, telling Bakugo to get out of here while he still can. Bakugo, scared and understanding, stands up and grabs the rest of his goons to get out of the area. Shortly after this happens, Midoriya drops from the state and falls down to the ground, panting. The person he had saved runs up to him and asks if he's alright, but Midoriya states that he is, and that he just needs a little time to rest, because for some reason he's extremely tired. The girl asked what Midoriya's quirk is, and Midoriya states that he thinks he might have just awakened it, but isn't sure. The girl understands, and that's when she stands up to try and get attention from someone. She tries to see if she can get a teacher over to where they are. Seeing as though, they're at a playground. Or seeing as though they're at a playground, trying to see if they can get an adult somewhere. Not readily seeing anyone available, she sits back down and makes medical equipment for Midoriya to address any wounds that he might have. But, shockingly, he doesn't have any wounds and is just extremely tired. Midoriya watches her as she does all this, and finds that she has an interesting ability, or quirk, and questions what it is. The girl then speaks up. Her name is Momo Yaoyorozu, and her ability, or her quirk, is creation. She's able to make any object as long as she understands the way it's made. Midoriya nods his head, finding this ability extremely interesting, and questions out loud what he assumes to be his quirk, considering the fact that he doesn't know himself. The pair talk for a little bit, or the pair talk for a little while, and shortly after, Midori is able to get enough energy to stand up for him, or stand up by himself. Momo asks if he's alright, to stand up by himself, but Midori nods his head, stating that he's fine. Midori thanks her for the assistance and walks away, both going their own separate paths. As Midori gets home, he tells his mother that he thinks he might have awakened his quirk, and Inko takes Izuku to the quirk doctor. Upon going there, Izuku gets x-rayed and notices that he does indeed have a quirk, seeing as though the pinky toe is missing. But they ultimately don't know what exactly it is. They run through a ton of tests, and they still aren't able to really find it out. They just note that he has seemingly enhanced strength and speed and reflexes for a child his age. But other than that, they can't really tell. So for now, they just call his ability. Or, for now, Midori comes up with the name Ultra Instinct. Not exactly knowing why, but feeling as though that it would be the right name. The scientists understand this, and she logs it down in the files. Going home, Midori is excited that he has a quirk, and so is Inko. But Midori states that he needs to get stronger in order to become the #1 hero. So, from a very young age, Midori begins to train. And seeing her child be so engrossed with training, Inko becomes inspired and decides to sign Midoriya up for martial arts. And to both of their along with their teachers' surprise, Midoriya picks up on martial arts extremely easily. Almost as second nature to him. Being able to get to the abilities of a black belt in a matter of months. And not only for only one type of martial arts, but being able to reach near master rank at that same amount of time. People don't understand how it's happening or why, but it is. Midori continues to train, and eventually he finds that he's much stronger than previously thought. Understandably, Midori is excited that this is happening, and over the time that he is training, Midoriya and Bakugo become more friendly. More so Bakugo becoming more friendly, because in this what if he isn't going to be as... or he isn't going to have as big as an ego as he did in canon. Over the time, Midori continues training and gets his abilities to near superhuman levels. Surpassing superhuman levels. And Midori goes on to eventually get to middle school and beyond. Taking that fateful route, Midoriya goes and walks through the alleyway with the sludge villain, and Midoriya feels something weird as he begins trying to scan the area. But as he does, he notices that the cigarette behind him rattled, and right before he gets grabbed, his eyes turn silver and he dodges out of the way. The sludge villain is initially confused, so he looks around trying to find where the kid had gone, but that's when he notices that the kid is behind him. The sludge villain goes to attack again, but the kid disappears yet again. But the sludge villain looks around, and he's not there. The sludge villain wonders where he is, but that's when the sludge villain looks up, noticing that he's on top of one of the walls, clinging to it. The sludge villain is confused, but as he tries to attack again, Midoriya disappears and appears right in front of the sludge villain, having his palm open, sending the palm directly towards the sludge villain, in which a large gust of wind collides with the sludge villain's body and displaces the sludge villain everywhere. As this happens, a muscular man bursts through the cigarette and immediately begins speaking. "I am here to save you. You, young man, had you done this?" Midoriya looks up as he's slowly putting the sludge villain in a bottle, and he nods. All Might acknowledges the fact that Midoriya is putting away the sludge villain, and continues to do so with him as well. Once Midoriya and All Might finish collecting the sludge villain, Midoriya gives the bottle to All Might, and All Might questions what the kid's name is. Midoriya states that his name is Izuku Midoriya, and his quirk is Ultra Instinct. All Might wants to question further, seeing as though this kid has great potential, but notices that he's running out of time. Midoriya notices the urgency in All Might and decides to question what exactly All Might's hiding, seeing as though, he needs to go in such a hurry. All Might states that it's nothing, as he waves off to Midoriya and jumps off. And as he does this, All Might begins speaking to himself. "Only a few moments left in this form. I don't even know if I can get to the next building in time." But as he says this, Midoriya is standing next to him, along with him jumping, and questions, "So, what form are you talking about? Are you an imposter? Did I give the sludge to a villain? If so, then I can't allow you to escape." As this happens, All Might is scared, All Might's shocked, seeing as though this kid just followed him with relative ease, and lands to the next building. All Might tries to jump away again, but Midoriya clings onto his leg, not letting him jump off. But as this happens, All Might poofs down. Midoriya questions who this is, and All Might shows his scar, seeing as though, it's too late now and there's nothing he can really do. Midoriya questions what the scar is for, and All Might states that he had fought against a strong villain, he had fought against a strong villain quite some time ago, and had gained this severe injury, which had put a limit to how long he can stay in his hero form or his buff form. Midoriya understands and apologizes for peeking in on All Might's personal business. All Might understands and says that it's alright, just to not reveal his identity. Midoriya nods and they both go their separate ways. But as this happens, Midoriya hears an explosion. A large one at that. Wondering what it is, Midoriya walks his way over there and sees a ton of heroes standing next to a gate, along with a ton of civilians standing there as well. Midoriya squeezes his way through, trying to see what's going on, but that's when he sees the same sludge villain that he had earlier. This time in the middle of the alleyway, along with a ton of heroes not really doing anything. Some of them are doing their job, like suppressing the fires, but others are definitely not, just standing there. Midoriya questions what's going on, especially with all the explosions, and that's when he sees it. A student from his school, his friend, Katsuki Bakugo, is trapped in the sludge villain. Midoriya is shocked by this and questions as to why it's happening, and Midoriya thinks back to when All Might and himself were jumping off. He must have shocked All Might so much that he had dropped the sludge bottles. Midoriya becomes upset with himself, but ultimately decides that right now is not the time and that he needs to go and save Bakugo. Midoriya decides that right now would be the best time, seeing as though everyone is in a panic and the sludge villain is still trying to take control. And that's when Midoriya runs in, his eyes yet again growing silver. All the heroes try to stop him, but Midoriya just dodges their grabs as he runs closer and closer to the sludge villain. As Midoriya continues running towards the sludge villain, he goes in and attacks the sludge villain, or he goes in and attacks the sludge villain, sending a palm strike towards it. This knocks one of the sludge villain's arms back, but he didn't put enough force into it to, splatter the sludge villain like he had before, not wanting to hurt Bakugo. But this time Midoriya, out of desperation, grabs onto where he believes Bakugo's shirt would be, in which he grabs it, pulls Bakugo out, and sends an extreme... he grabs Bakugo's shirt, pulling Bakugo out, and then sends an extreme punch, sends a punch as hard as he can towards the sludge villain, scattering the sludge villain like he had before. All the heroes are impressed, and so are the civilians, but Midoriya, not wanting to get publicity and wanting to get Bakugo medical attention as soon as he can, jumps off. The heroes are confused as to why, or as to what's going on, but ultimately try and contain the sludge villain as soon as they can. Upon taking Bakugo to the hospital, they state that he was just unconscious for a little while and just needs rest. Midoriya understands and leaves the hospital, but shortly after, upon walking home, All Might stops him. Midoriya questions why All Might's there, and Midoriya questions why All Might's there, and All Might states that he had deemed Midoriya worthy and wants to give Midoriya his quirk. Midoriya thinks about this for a second and begins speaking up. I might be crazy for doing this, rejecting the number one hero's power, but no. For some weird reason, I don't feel like it'd be right. I feel as though something about my power does not want your power. Doesn't feel safe to me. All Might wants to question more, but Midoriya states that he himself doesn't know why, but his answer won't change, at least for now. All Might understands, but request on still training Midoriya. With this request, Midoriya agrees without even thinking about it, seeing as though he wouldn't pass up the chance to train with the number one hero. And upon this happening, All Might is tasking Midoriya with the same thing, in which Midoriya clears it with relative ease. And he and All Might just continue to train on that empty beach, as All Might tries to figure out who is going to give One for All to. All Might has made sure that Midoriya doesn't spread the word of any of All Might's secrets, and Midoriya understands, wanting to ensure that the secrets are still, remaining secrets. All Might thanks Midoriya, but that's when Midoriya states that it's really nothing. It's really nothing. During this training, Midoriya and All Might become relatively friendly towards each other, and that's around the time that the UA entrance exams come along. As Midoriya goes off to attend the UA entrance exam, he walks through the doors, walking towards UA, but that's when he notices someone around him is going to trip. Immediately grabbing onto their bag, Midoriya pulls them back up to an upright position and question if they're alright. The person acknowledges that they are and immediately thanks him as they run in. Midoriya walks in as well, not wanting to be late, and notices that he's sitting next to Bakugo. He and Bakugo listen to the directions, or listen to President Mike speak, after they had taken their test, and notice that they're both in different areas, seeing as though they probably don't want people who are familiar with each other to be in the same place. They acknowledge and continue to listen to President Mike speak. But that's when a kid in blue hair begins speaking up, immediately yelling towards President Mike that he is, if there are, on the pamphlet, there are 4 robots, and yet he had only gone over 3 so far, even though that the pamphlet says otherwise. And if this is an oversight by UA, then he's extremely disappointed because, UA is supposed to be the number one hero in high school. Midoriya and Bakugo grow irritated at him, but as he sits back down, President Mike begins speaking up, yet again. Well, I would have gone over those if you had just given me the chance, seeing as though that was the next topic to cover. But, whatever. The 4th and final robot is going to be known as a 0 pointer. As you can tell by its name, it's worth 0 points, which means that it's more of an obstacle than a goal. So, yeah, I'd do my best to try and avoid it. Now, time for you guys to get to your testing fields. Time goes by and they get to their testing areas, and Midori is walking to the front, wanting to get a better area to start. And this time he is not stopped by Ida, because, well, he didn't really interrupt people during the other thing, so Ida doesn't have a problem with him now. But Midoriya is nonetheless irritated at Ida's actions. As Midoriya is stretching, he notices the person that he'd seen in the entrance exam trying to calm themselves down. Midoriya puts some distance between them, wanting to give them space, and as soon as the doors drop, Midoriya runs through, in which Ida screams out that the child is blatantly cheating. But President Mike states that there's no countdown in a real battle and he should get going already. Ida is shocked by this, but immediately starts running out, noticing that he can't catch up to Midoriya. And as he notices this, everyone else notices that all the robots had already been broken. Well, not all the robots, but all the robots that were readily active had already been broken, only leaving some low-pointing robots. Midori notes that he probably got enough points for now and decides to just go around helping people where they need. Midori keeps doing this until he sees the zero-pointer. Midori, not wanting to get into needless conflict, is going to start running away, but that's when he hears someone screaming out for help. Upon looking back, it's the same person that he had saved during the entrance exam, and wanting to make sure that they're safe, Midori runs over to where they are and lifts up the rebel off of them. Midori asks if the person's okay, and they state that they believe they had sprained their ankle. Understanding, Midori runs over and puts the person down next to a building that he deems safe, and tells them to stay there. Midori turns around to face a gigantic robot, and Midori runs towards it with blinding speeds as he jumps up. Everyone sees this child jump up to an extreme height and run with extreme speeds, but what he does next astonishes them all. Midori cocks back his fist, and with one quick motion, his fist goes plunging forward, sending an extremely large pressurized wind blast at the zero-pointer. As this happens, the zero-pointer is hit by this impact and is greatly damaged by it, sending it backwards quite a distance. As it happens, Midori's hit knocked it off balance and ends up toppling it over, destroying the zero-pointer. Midori returns back to the ground with relative ease, using the buildings around him to brace his fall. And that's when he goes back over to the person who had saved him and asks if they're alright. They nod their head but state that they still aren't able to move their ankle, and that's when Midori picks them up. Shortly after Midori picks them up, the bell rings, notifying them that the entrance exams have now finished. Midori is slightly disappointed at this, seeing as though he wanted to get more points, but ultimately it doesn't matter. Midori goes to the entrance to see if they can get medical attention, and that's when Recovery Girl shows up, healing Uraraka, who has a clear injury, but when she goes to heal Midori states that he doesn't need it. She questions what he means, but Midori shows that he hadn't received any damage. Recovery Girl is fascinated by this, but allows him to go. Midori turns around quickly and asks the person who he had saved for their name, seeing as though he had not gotten it. And that's when the girl speaks up. Her name is Ochiko Uraraka. Midoriya nods, understanding, and waves off, stating that his name is Izuku Midoriya, and he is hopeful that he'll see her in the hero course. And with that being said, and that's where we'll be leaving today's What If off. Sorry if it seemed like I breezed through this, but yeah. You know the whole thing. Discord link in description, playlist link in description if you hadn't watched part 0. And yeah, with that being said, see ya.